Peace. Salam. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, and Roku TV, and of course our website, muslimnetwork.tv. The world is amazing and interesting. It's turning and changing, and we're wondering where it is heading. It's fast. It's bewildering. Strange. We laugh more on watching TV than we joke with ourselves, with each other. Bill Gates is the one who got not so himself, but a whole lot of billionaires to devote 100% of their wealth for the welfare of human beings. And he is number one in the investment of finding a vaccine and a cure for coronavirus. But he is the subject of conspiracies, number one. Isn't this strange? Scientists are telling us to have a mask and create a 6 feet of distance, except there is a crusade against masks. And some of the crusaders are themselves becoming subject of the pandemic. In this world of conflict, physical conflict, emotional conflicts, slogans, partisanship, human beings becoming brutal towards each other. There are voices of reason, calm voices asking us to be compassionate. One of those sane voices is Marilyn Turkovich. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, Marilyn.
Thank you. It's a real honor and a pleasure. We've been working together for several years, and I admire all of the work that you're doing. And I always say to my friends, when I get a call from Imam Malik, I have to sit straight and be ready for the next big challenge.
Thank you so much. One of the challenge for peacemakers and compassionate people is to be able to become as master communicator as unfortunately the crazy world is. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started Muslim Network Television. So at least Muslim voices are not taken over by other people. I mean, Muslim need to have some control of their narrative, if not full control of their mm-hmm. narrative. So thank you so much for being a great partner in there. Marilyn Turkovich is a leader with Charter for Compassion, which she joined in 2013. She has been a teacher's teacher, directing teachers training programs in the Midwest, as well as famous Columbia College in Chicago. She has developed trainings on race, social justice initiative, as well as a toolkit to fight Islamophobia. Marilyn, where do you get all this energy to do so many things?
I don't know. I think that when a cause becomes personal, and I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge that we have, is to just jump in and get to know what's going on, and then with the help of others to really brainstorm and figure out, what is it that we need to do. And so all of those things that you've talked about, certainly, like, I know you're the person who's the catalyst, and we get the ball rolling. And so I think sometimes that's exactly what I've learned to do. And maybe that's because of coming from an extended family who relied on one another, saw problems, and then just got involved with the help of others. I think that gives you the energy and the impetus to move forward.
Has it been easier for a woman to provide leadership? I mean, when my mind is fresh, I just saw this morning about, AOC was handled by a congressperson. Mm-hmm. And I watched a little bit of how she handled it,
Right.
despite a eyewitness reporter who heard himself, congressman denying, and she said that I'm younger, 2 years younger than your own daughter. How you
Mhm.
can do that? I mean, you see that, barriers are coming down for women leadership, but then you encounter things like that out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I was real fortunate when I worked with the Associated Colleges of the Midwest, which headquartered in Chicago. Um, there was a counter program. I was urban education, there was urban studies, and there was a wonderful woman, Pat Roselle, and she always used to say, "What ism did you stop today?" Uh, and she would ask that, to any number of people. Uh, and I think that is something that, causes a person initially to jerk, and then to think, and then to explore for themselves, what are they doing? I thought Alexandria's response was right on, that there are times, I mean, she stopped several isms in her response. And I think that those are challenges that we need to take on, embrace, and then, I always follow the premise that you have to have courage to be imperfect. Um, and so I think that the challenges are there every day, and oftentimes we let silence be our modem for communication, and that doesn't get us very far.
Oh, silence. Silence kills.
Mhm. Yeah.
So why there was a need for charter for compassion?
Well, the story of the Charter for Compassion lies at the doorstep of Karen Armstrong, and many people who are listening today probably know of her work, and um, know certainly of the book that she's written on Islam, um, and a number of other works. But I think she got personally to the point where she felt that compassion, through all of her research into comparative religions, brought her to the point that she saw compassion as the last resort. Um, that other things weren't working. What did we have? And so she sparked the idea of compassion. And in writing her book, 12 Steps for a Compassionate Life, it's almost become somewhat of a not a textbook, but certainly a valuable volume for people um, to begin to understand what compassion is, that it's not passive, that it is really acting on behalf of others. It's looking at the suffering of people, but moving beyond, just holding that suffering and being empathetic to the suffering, but then to really say, what is it that we can do um, to to challenge the suffering and to respond to it. And so it was the TED organization that gave her the very first TED Award. Um, and she challenged the TED Talks to actually give her help in creating a charter for compassion. So that was the beginning 10 years ago of how the charter came about. And TED also put it online and asked the global community. And I think over 160,000 people responded to what did they want in a charter for compassion. And ironically, a major thesis contained within the Charter for Compassion, which is only a little over 360 words, is the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. to dethrone yourself from where you are in life and to look at the realities around you.
So, and the 12 step which she suggested, are some of those steps incorporated in the charter as well as in the program?
Yes, they certainly are. And, respect for others, making clear information. There's a wonderful part of making certain that children receive information that's honest and to their ability uh, to take it on. There is that whole notion that in being collective with one another, that we can really bring about change in the world.
Okay, so what is the ground impact of the charter?
I wish I can say that we knew exactly what that impact was, uh, because I think that so often what happens is that people read perhaps the book, learn about the charter in various ways, like even through the vehicle that we're enjoying today. But the impact is that we have a lot of cities, for example, who have come together at the grassroots and who have tried, I think, their best. And in some cases, I shouldn't say that it's a general best, but have tried to really begin the process of dialogue locally so that within the context of a community, a city, that they bring people together and say, what's most troublesome to us? What are some of our grave issues? What are the things that make it difficult to live in this community? And then to broaden that conversation, to bring in people who have really started to address some of those issues. And as those issues are addressed, to find out, what is it that's working? What can we learn from one another? And then the next step is to really engage with political individuals, leaders within the community, city councils, and then make your way up to city manager and make your way up to the mayor, and understand that this is a collaborative effort from the grassroots and from the top. And so that in many cases, we have compassionate cities who've gone through that entire process of beginning the dialogue, understanding the issues, selecting issues that they want to work on, creating an action plan, and doing that in conjunction with local government. So that right now we have about 114, 116 cities around the world who have gone through that entire process. But we have well over another 300 who have said that, yes, we are starting this initiative and, we're working on it. And that's happening around the world right now in about 52 countries.
So it's essentially aimed at the institutions to become more compassionate?
Well, there's not a 1, 2, 3 step that the charter itself, as an organization, as a movement, says that you have to do. But the community itself, who is forming the initiative, decides, how is it that they're going to move forward. And when you say institutions, and we look at issues like institutional racism, or, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez discovered in the halls of Congress, that there's issues around feminism, there's issues around religious prejudice, there's issues around young versus old. I mean, it's, as you started this program, it almost seems like it's endless. So what we've tried as the Charter for Compassion is not to invent new programs, but to really unite with programs that are really effective. So we have done that with Life University in really promoting a course called Compassion Integrity Training. And the idea is that it's a three series or a three-step approach to understanding compassion for yourself, beginning to understand compassion for others and that interaction of self to others, and then understanding systems and institutions and how is it that you can begin to, well, first understand them and then to move forward with discernment on how it is that you're going to work or challenge an institution.
Well, this is Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Marlin Turkovich on Muslim Network TV. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite. I was about to say Galaxy 19. This is Charter of Compassion satellite, as well as Amazon Fire TV, Raku, and Muslim Network.tv. We'll be right back after these messages.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah, let's explore.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Marlin Turkovich of Charter for Compassion. So you were talking about what makes a city, the process cities go through to make that city more compassionate city. What are the essential features which you ask are essential steps which you would like a charter city to take before they are declared a charter city?
I think that, we've created, and you mentioned this up front, a toolbox with the help of the University of Kansas, the Community Toolbox group that has been going on for over 30 years. I think that some of the essentials are that whoever begins the process, wakes up one morning and says, this is horrible. This issue needs to be taken care of. I need to begin the process of talking about this and finding out how we can address that. So that's usually where it starts. And then somewhere along the line, they contact the Charter for Compassion. And the first thing that we do is to say, you know, who are some like-minded people that would be as passionate about an issue as you are? Then the next step is, once you have a group, realizing that one brain, two hands are strengthened when there are more brains and more hands involved. And then to challenge the group by saying, how diverse are you? In every possible way that you can think of. Geographically within your community, age-wise, ethnic groups, religious groups. Think about how you can bring in other voices. Next step, what's working in your community? Who has been successful as perhaps an individual, an entrepreneur, or most likely who's been successful as an organization, as a social service group, as an NGO. Learn from them, bring them into the conversation, and begin the process of talking about, what are the primary concerns that we have in this community. Next step is, who is it that we can turn to in city government? Is it a council person who might be our champion as an advocate, who would lend a listening ear? How can we make our way to the entire local government? How can we make our way to the mayor? How do we present and really show that we're responsible citizens who really want to contribute to making things right for all people in the community? Oftentimes, we'll be the ear for people, asking questions, considering what the next steps are, pointing them to perhaps another community that has been somewhat successful, maybe encouraging them to adopt that other community, or for that community to become a mentor to the other city. And our job, I think, is to offer and promote success, so that people can say, oh, here's a community that's dealing with food scarcity. Here's another community dealing with homelessness. Here's a community that really wants to listen to youth and to provide them an outlet that is something that they deserve. So it varies, what people are working on. It might be water sanitation. I think you were the first person to challenge the charter with Flint, Michigan. And we started a whole series of trying to bring people together to alert them to what was going on through some of the conversations that we had. Brought in union organizers to help with the problem in Flint. We contacted water providers in other cities that joined in the dialogue. And I think you'll remember we had city council people who were involved in those kinds of conversations. So we're a conduit to help, I think, when problems arise that really need to be addressed.
So out of the 116 cities, you said, where the Charter of Compassion is adopted. So out of those 116 cities, which city has been more successful?
That's a real way of getting me in trouble. I think there are many. I think, but
You know how to get out of the trouble.
no. I think that, when you look at what cities are doing, in a place like Fayetteville, Arkansas, they're concerned about helping refugees get resettled. They're concerned about an age-long problem of lack of dialogue between the races within the city. So they're doing so much work in that direction. If we look at Atlanta, Georgia, they have been extremely successful with their approach to, education, to community building, to homelessness, but also thinking about, how is it that we can offer programs that will really provide people with a foundation for understanding compassion and how you go about it within the context of the city, but also the relationship of the city to the suburbs. They've also been involved with education in prisons of compassion. So, I can go on, and as you can see that the problems are unique to individual communities and cities. What isn't so unique is the fact that just understanding what compassion is all about and how each of us are very compassionate, but sometimes we just don't know exactly what to do with that, so that there is kind of an organizational aspect of compassion. How to listen, how to give gratitude to groups that are really functioning, how to consider forgiveness, how to consider reconciliation. So, education, from working with very, very young children to working with seasoned people like ourselves, is really very, very important. And that's one other thing. I truly believe that we're beginning to not only take some creative action on by presenting programs, but I think that we're on the right path. For the last couple of years, we've had strategic partners in education that has been really extraordinary education for very young people. One called Think Equal that we've introduced in some of our compassionate cities. We're working with 3 to 6-year-olds in emotional intelligence, social emotional learning, and compassion. And the same thing is adopting SEE Learning, SEE Learning, which is a legacy program of the Dalai Lama that's being run out of Emory University, and it's for older students and very adaptable up through the college level and beyond. It takes creativity, local creativity, to pull it in to the way that it should be used within a community. So I think that that's a long answer to a very difficult question that you posed for me.
Well, I don't claim to be a journalist. I'm a peace and justice person who need to work on his compassion. But I think, all the preachers, including myself, preach compassion.
Mhm.
So what you're trying to do is get institutions created by human being to become more passionate. I mean, this
Yeah,
seems to be the strongest part of the Charter for
yeah,
Compassion's current program. So it is very interesting to learn. And maybe there should be some independent measurement system other than your organization
yeah,
to just say that among all the 116 charter cities who have adopted the Charter of Compassion, here are the measurement known and public, and then the rate. I mean, if freedom, if the United States Commission rates democracy and freedom and level of religious freedom around the world, why not we rate institutions and cities how compassionate they are?
right,
That's it could be something which is independently designed, and there should be a known criteria, and let people see that, and maybe on their website of that independent organization, people, citizens of a city, can rate the way
yeah,
comment on the rating which has been done.
yeah,
So to give a more voice to the whole idea of our cities need to be compassionate cities.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We do have a few cities that are, looking at measurement, looking at values. There is a group in Louisville, Kentucky, that has taken the city index, and which is kind of a norm for many cities in the way that they're measuring what's happening within the city. And this, the city index has been expanded to list questions around compassion. I think, and you're in the field of communication, and you know the challenge of, you can say that a city, it can be any city, has made its way and said, oh, we are a compassionate city. We're willing to affirm the Charter for Compassion. But still, the city might be a city of 1 million people. Not every one of the 1 million know about the Charter for Compassion. So, another big challenge besides measurement is to really communicate across the community lines, city lines, what's going on with compassion. How can a school be more compassionate, a business be more compassionate, a hospital and healthcare, so that, it's huge when you think about all of the places where compassion really should be, the guiding and maybe the challenging force within the organization and within the institution. We've been around for 10 years in terms of a charter as a movement. I think our real efforts started about 5 years ago. So we're very young, and we need a lot of help in, what you just said, in terms of measurement, evaluation, communication. A lot of work to be done.
Tell me this. I mean, everyone who saw that officer's knee on George Floyd's neck have seen it, and they cannot liberate themselves from that image and the absence of compassion. There must be compassion, but some code, blue code, didn't allow other officers to stop him. And that goes on in our country, substantially. So compassion in policing, it may be a good idea. You probably already have several things. Maybe there need to be a task force talking about, there is a call for defunding police. There is a call of police reform. There is a call for many, many things of the reform oriented, and all politician was always for reform. Nobody says they are not for reform, but it doesn't quite happen. But the vocabulary of compassion, a charter in which a dialogue takes place about a task force which leads a conversation about compassion in policing. Do you think there's something like that is happening already to inform others? Otherwise, think about it.
Yeah, and to answer your question, yes. One of our board members has been working, I'm almost going to say feverishly, to help bring compassion and to police forces, and has made some introductions to police forces in LA and several other places. The compassion integrity training that I spoke of has been in prisons and has worked with prison administrators and guards as well as inmates. And we've been really talking about, how is it that we can take that program as one program, most probably of several, to make it available to police officers. I just had a conversation several weeks ago with one of the creators of compassionate integrity training about, is it best to have police as one unit taking compassionate integrity training, or is it better to get a mixed group of people only because then you begin to see different perspectives that people bring in to the conversation, into the experience. And, is not that notion that each of us hold our own perspective about something important in order to really learn from one another, so that, as you say, what stops us from, trying to stop something? And I'm going to go back to that question that my colleague would ask us. What have you done to stop an ism? What have you done to stop something that is occurring as outrageous as one of your fellow police officers holding down a knee on a person who's crying out? What stops us from doing that? And so I think that perspective that each of us can bring into a conversation is really important, because when people ask the question like you just did, most people just stop and say, I don't know the answer. But collectively, I think we can begin to challenge for and really dig deep for the answer.
Thank you so much. We are talking with Marilyn Turkovich. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. We'll be right back after these messages.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. Past campaigns covered a wide range of humanitarian concerns. Through Bosnia Task Force, imams and leaders of Chicago's Muslim community worked to ensure Bosnia became a top national issue. This led to life-saving American policies in Bosnia. A key accomplishment was helping to get rape declared a war crime. Initiatives also included Kosovo Task Force, Central African Republic Task Force, and Flint Coalition, which brought awareness to the water crisis affecting the people of Flint, Michigan. Highlights of our work include supporting Black Lives Matter, Parliament of the World's Religions, addressing climate change.
So wasteful consumption starts the ruthless production, and that's where we need all the fossil fuel in the world.
And prominent media exposure.
This is Imam Malik Mujahid, President of Justice for All.
And I'm the Director of Outreach for Justice for All.
And that's why we need to go back to what worked.
Today we're demanding an apology from the CEO of Costco.
The Chinese crackdown on Uyghurs and other Turkic people has only gotten worse.
Current programs such as Burma Task Force advocate for the rights of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, internally displaced populations, and all those denied freedom of movement and at risk of starvation. Through this, we mobilized thousands of calls to elected representatives. This paved the way for the U.S. to increase funding for Rohingya refugees from $30 million to over $600 million. Two of our documentaries were featured on international news outlets. The Rohingya People, A Slow-Burning Genocide on BBC World News, and Rohingya Refugees Tell of Massacre was featured on CNN. We've organized rallies, UN mission visits, expanded presentations on campuses, promoted research and report writing, outreach to think tanks, media, and other influencers. Faith Coalition educates about the Rohingya genocide and crimes against humanity faced by ethnic groups in Burma. We've traveled to refugee camps, convened a meeting of Karen, Kachin, and Rohingya leaders, both to encourage cooperation and to guide them in congressional outreach. We organized Rohingya Advocacy Day. This led to over 100 participants visiting the offices of 60 U.S. senators and congressional representatives. Free Kashmir advocates for the people of Kashmir. Long-term goals include the call for self-determination, the end of the Indian military's occupation of the territory, and raising awareness of Kashmiri issues among the American people. After the August 5th reinvasion of Kashmir, we organized national protests in front of various Indian government buildings, partnered with Stand With Kashmir, and launched a petition condemning the Gates Foundation's decision to present Prime Minister Modi a humanitarian award. Save Uyghur informs Muslims and neighbors of other faiths about the ongoing cultural genocide of Uyghur Muslims and mobilizes public support. Our projects include boycotting Chinese products with our Fast from China campaign, pushing Bill S-178 in the Senate, and organizing a nationwide protest of Costco. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. You're watching Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, as well as muslimnetwork.tv. And this is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Marilyn Turkovich, who is with the Charter for Compassion. One of the things, Marilyn, which I have seen, I was not here when civil rights marches were taking place, those in the 60s. But I have seen the photos, I have been to the museums, I have read autobiographies, I live in communities of people of color who have been part and parcel of that struggle, and I interviewed those people. What we are seeing nowadays is that a whole lot of young white people, boys and girls, they are marching in unprecedented numbers. Sometimes they are in larger number, and sometimes they are the only one marching for police reform and for compassion and for asking our institutions, especially institutions of authority and institutions of coercion, to become better and improved. These young people, they are product probably of our educational system. So you have been teacher, tell me if there is something better in the education as compared to the people who got educated in the 50s and the 60s, which is letting these people, or these people are educated on the streets of social media. What is happening here? I mean, I'm seeing it as a positive sign that so many young people are concerned about our society and our people and our diversity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I was a young student during the 60s and was very much involved. I came to Chicago to work on the west side of the city right after graduating from college, found myself in Mississippi working on voters' rights, marched in the Meredith March, was unsuccessful. And even though there were willing African-American people who we accompanied to the courthouse to have them register to vote, but never was able to get anyone to be able to vote because of the laws of taking a test, which were already stopped. But the communities didn't know that they
So,
were going to
so
follow that.
Marilyn, you personally were involved and walking to the court to get blacks registered to vote, and you're
Yeah.
not successful. What city and what year was it?
Well, it was Canton. It was the Meredith March, primarily the journey from through Mississippi, from Canton, Mississippi, down to Jackson. The march was at the end, because of all of the trouble we encountered, became a forced march of just the men after there was an attack by the guard, Mississippi Guard, on the marchers. But I'm saying this because there were so few whites that were involved in that march, as well as some of the other marches. The numbers increased through the years. In Chicago, the same thing. I mean, there's lots of visions of Marquette Park and Gage Park, the white community against the marchers. But what's happened since that time, I truly believe is, in some ways, schools are more integrated. And I mean, that would become a long conversation about the whole integration process. I think the fact that that history might be shared more than it had been. I mean, I think that, when I went to school, it was a history that really concentrated on the winners. But I think that, the idea of the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement, the explosion of media, from TV to the internet, that whole barrage of information that's available to people. I think that, has really helped. And I think that the whole notion of social justice is, for some people, it's rather new. And I think that young people are really taking to rights of individuals. And so I think that in education, I think that has been really remarkable. And I think our literature is rich right now. Not that it wasn't before, with kind of situational pieces that are incredibly important. Writers like Toni Morrison, for example, really started with Alice Walker, California Cooper, to pave the way for us to begin to understand. I mean, I remember being so struck with Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. And that literature that has come to us through the last decades has been, I think, just ground shaking. It's rocking our hearts. And I think that's been some of the change. And I believe that, teachers, educators who have brought that into colleges and high schools have really made a significant change and difference. So I think it's a really complex array of what's happening and has happened over the last couple of decades in education. Doesn't work in every community in the country, but certainly we're seeing signs that it has brought about massive change.
Unfortunately, the opposite is happening, Madeline, in India. I met a person in an interfaith gathering, and a good person pointed out he's the person who changed the curriculum and books in India, which about 30 years ago, which depict Muslims as enemy and wipe out complete heritage of accomplishment and have a lot of myths. Some of those educational books actually appreciates Hitler and what it did, and it is taught in some business schools. I mean, Hitler is very popular there nowadays. And now we see a government which has come into being, which has cast about a institution called Genocide Watch to declare 2 genocide alerts about India. And in an environment in which 200 million Muslims in India are being accused that they are responsible for COVID virus. I mean, they have a hashtag called COVID Jihad and things of this nature. In that tense situation, Charter for Compassion is sitting here, but you have chapters and you have people, you're trying to deal with that situation. How do you deal with that?
I know it is so difficult. I was in India twice last year, both to do education workshops and to certainly listen to people, their concerns. I don't know of some of the things of which you spoke. And, you know, sometimes our eyes are a little clouded because I get to work with people who are desperately trying to bring about change and who are dealing with compassionate education training within their institutions. But at the same time, I was there in April with the launch of the Dalai Lama Sea Learning Program, but spent a little extra time there in working with our compassionate cities. And then I returned at the end of August. I felt the difference from April to August and what was going on and the tension in the streets, what was going on with the Muslim community, what was happening in Kashmir. And, you know, it's appalling. I don't know an answer for it. I know that, you know, that there are like the Soil Management Institute, which is one of our partners in India. It's a master's program in business, and it's the School of Inspired Leadership. And they're working in a direction that is totally different from what you said. And I worked at Obi Jindal University with the UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi program for peace and education and social emotional learning. And you can only imagine that that program too is trying so hard to bring about a different way of learning and interacting with all of the diversity that is present in India. And all we can do is, you know, to continue to really tread water right now, but certainly to, you know, and we have joined forces, but, you know, it's so difficult. And, you know, we invite anyone who has approaches and answers of how to deal with this intense dilemma. You know, we would welcome input.
Madeline, you know, thank you so much for visiting and learning and connecting with people who are equally worried as you and I are worried about it. There are always great partners, and some of those partners are in touch with me since yesterday. I think I must have about 8, 9 communication with those people in India who are true partner, and their heart are aching because of what's happening there. I mean, you have created something called Islamophobia, fighting Islamophobia toolkit. What is the possibility then some toolkits are regional based? For example, strengthening compassion and building on the heritage of Gandhi in India, something like that. Because there are a whole lot of Indians who are very proud in America, and some people have written about it, that how come they are all liberal when it comes to rights and diversity in America, and at the same time they remain silent about what's happening over there. So maybe those people will be and there are those people. I mean, I remember I was in Hollywood talking to a business executive who was Indian in Hollywood. I mean, she represents different actors and whatnot. I was trying to recruit some actors to speak up for Rohingya people. And once the meeting was over, she said, would you mind talking to me a little more? And she goes, what do you think about Modi? And of course, I told her what I think. And then she just went on, I fully agree. She was of Indian heritage. And she fully agreed. I said, but I have a hard time convincing my parents about all of that. What should we do? I mean, there are good people all around us. So do you think there is a possibility of some regionally focused material?
I only smiled because I have a feeling that this is our next joint project.
Okay.
And
I'm available.
Okay, we need your help.
Okay, thank you so much, Marilyn. You have been good. And I hope you stay healthy and maintain that safe 6 feet distance, and cover yourself with a mask. And I'm not asking you to cover with burqa, just with a mask. That's a good beginning.
Right, very good.
Well, thank you so much. This is
Thank you.
Imam Malik Mujahid, and you have been watching Conversation with Marilyn Turkovich, who is a good partner in Charter for Compassion. And you have been watching us on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and MuslimNetwork.tv. Our producer today is Sumaya Haider, supported by Aliza Majid, who is our intern producer. Peace.